Sup world, Heart of Shadows Rogue Heartseeker is back in Season 6, Vessel of Hatred, and it is in its best form it's ever been from the past few seasons. No longer do we have to build this around close quarters combat while jumping in to maintain the key passive buff. We also don't even need to slot Cold Imbuement on that bard, as the bug with Eldritch Bounty, Legendary Node, and Cold Clip has been fixed, giving us that Legendary Node power back. We can just sit back and pew pew all we want, building this around the key passive Victimize. Unlike other Victimize setups, we actually do want to build Heartseeker for some direct damage at the same time, due to the internal cooldown of Victimize for most speed farming activities. This allows for more consistent damage output that isn't so reliant on just burst and provides more unconditional modifiers. It's great that Shadow Imbuement remains in the build, amplifying the fun factor and providing that nice multiplicative bonus. I made sure to include footage this time of doing T4 with Mythic uniques as well as T3 without Mythic uniques, as I'm sure showcasing a build this early with gear most don't have isn't really helpful for a guide. Heartseeker can really do all the content with no problems. And for all the trolls out there, no, this isn't Spiritborn. And yes, I will continue to make rogue content. This is just one of many videos to come for the season. For all of you Heartseeker enjoyers, this is a top build for you to chew on. And welcome back to truly playing Range Rogue once again. Let's get started. Taking a look at the skills real quick, we start off with Heartseeker, and as you have to, because that's what the build is based around. You take all the way down to Primary Heartseeker because you want the Ricochet for more additional chances to be able to proc Victimize, as well as additional just damage in general from Heartseeker. You notice I did max out the Heartseeker itself, so I did put 5 points into it because your Heartseeker is actually dealing a little bit of damage that actually does make a difference. Coming down here, we don't take any core skills, of course. We take target practice for more crit chance, sturdy for a little bit more damage reduction. You can go a little higher if you want to, then siphoning strikes just to get a little bit of heals when you're close. Coming down here, we take cow traps with the chill. We want it for more damage as well as an easier time to freeze. And then we take the normal buffs such as weapon mastery for buff, trick attacks for buff, unstable elixirs when you pop a potion also for buff, anytime you evade also a buff too. So these are just your general buffs, things that you're going to want for most builds. Coming down here, we take dash all the way down to methodical dash. This is so that you have extra charges so you can get around pretty quickly. Coming down here to smoke grenade, we take this passive for the extra 25% damage, and also the countering smoke grenade so we can cast it more often whenever we do hit an elite. So dark shroud, we take this all the way down to countering dark shroud for the extra additional crit chance. And we come down to shadow imbuement, and this is actually not for the damage. So when things do blow up, which is extremely satisfying to the ear when it happens, and it looks visually cool, most of the shadow explosions aren't really dealing that much damage, to be honest with you. It's more just for the effect. But the reason why you're taking shadow imbuement here is because of the mixed shadow imbuement passive, and this is so therefore you can get a 12% multiplier by having enemies imbued with shadow. And the easiest way to be able to mark all the enemies with it is with Rain of Arrows. I actually kind of skipped a couple of multipliers here. So we got Malice and Exploit. Of course, you're going to take this, but I do want to talk about Malice for a second. Malice has a secondary effect where if you knock down enemies, you also get 9% multiplicative damage here. So it's a double effect. You get 9 for proccing them, making them vulnerable. You also get 9% here, also knocking them down. So we don't have any way to really knock down that well, which is the reason why. Another reason why we actually have Rain of Arrows, because Rain of Arrows actually does knock them down whenever you cast. So Rain of Arrows has multiple utilities that kind of makes this build really flow, and is really, really fun overall. Now coming back down to Cold Imbuement. This is going to activate with Cold Clip. So with Cold Clip, you get all the bonuses here. Also your way to be able to proc vulnerable. This is your easy way of doing it. We also have Frigid Finesse because of course Cold Clip. The one thing I do want to talk about with Cold Clip and Cold Imbuement now is that Cold Clip actually used to not proc Eldritch Bounty Legendary Node in our Paragon board. So we wasn't getting the 20% without having this on the bar and trying to proc it with dash or shadow step. It was really clunky that we had to do it that way last season. Well, they fixed that bug and it wasn't in the patch notes. So we don't have to have those in the bar anymore for any particular reason. We just put points into it, and all of a sudden our cold clip aspect for Heartseeker will proc all the juicy buffs, including Eldritch Bounties, no problems. Come down here, we take Alchemist Fortune because we really want to buff that lucky hit chance. Also makes it easier to sustain our energy. Impetus is a kind of up to you. I like Impetus, even though it doesn't really help victimize at all. It only just helps your Heartseeker damage, but I kind of like it because there isn't really too much else to really take that's going to help your build anyway. So I just put a couple of points in there to make my Heartseeker just a little bit stronger. It feels good to me, in my opinion. I put 1 point into Aftermath, get just a little bit of energy back whenever I cast my ultimate in case I do get low on resources. So 1 point here is nice to have. And then 1 point in Rain of Veils is all that's necessary. You don't really need more than that for that. So, but this is Rain of Arrows. If you notice, cast the skill, it knocks down the first wave. What you will notice is that you see it knocks down for 5.9 seconds. Obviously, it's not usually that long. I have crowd control duration on gear as well as on the helm for Kyle the Nameless. So this actually increases the duration of the knockdown, which is going to help with this buff here with Malice. Right here. Keep that buff with Malice so you can have it up longer. So crowd control duration with this is actually super good. Then we come down here, take Second Wind. This gives you a barrier. It makes you pretty tanky. And then of course, Innervation ranks, because without it, you're gonna run out of energy all the time in this particular setup. Well, unless you have Beastfall boots, but we'll kind of talk later on that. And then the hero of the build, Victimize. So we basically take as much vulnerable damage as we possibly can on gear to be able to scale this Victimize. Now it works a little bit differently than it used to in the past. It has an ICD now, and it works off of your weapon damage. So the ICD is about 0.5 seconds. So that means that you're not going to get your Victimized explosions happening all the time, but in between the ICDs, the damage actually backloads. So all the times that you would have proc Victimized in that window will calculate into one big burst damage after the 0.5 second internal cooldown hits. So it's really cool for burst damage, but it can feel a little like spazzy because sometimes it's, you're trying to speed farm and you're procking it, and that 0.5 seconds kind of seems like a while. It doesn't really seem like it, but I promise you, when you're speed farming, all that little bit of time actually does add up, which is the reason why we are going more direct damage for Heartseeker, so we don't have to worry about relying on Victimize so much for some of our speed clears and things. We'll talk more later about it, but these are your skills overall. All right, so now we go with gearing. So we're gonna start from the top. We take Kyle the Nameless. Basically, it's just a good overall helm. Unstable elixirs and trickster attacks are very good passes to have. Something that's very useful too, unlike in other particular setups in the past, is the crowd control duration is very nice. That helps with the Rain of Veils and the longer knockdown. So now the helm is being used for more than just unstable elixirs and trick attacks. Crowd control duration actually matters too here. I got unlucky with Rapid Gambits on the masterwork, but hey, it happens, and I'm broke. So the unique affix too as well, the 28% lucky hit chance against crowd control enemies is actually really good because, again, Victimize, you want to scale as much lucky hit as we possibly can to be able to get as much Victimize procs as possible. So coming down here to the chest, typically you want Dark Shroud ranks. I did not get a test with Dark Shroud ranks, so we kind of just settle for this. Dex maximum life armor to be able to try to cap. And then of course you see crowd control duration there. Pretty nice to have, pretty important, again, for the Rain of Veils knockdown. And then I got pretty lucky with this Fist of Fate. I got this this drop from a friend who didn't really need a Fist of Fate at all. And he was like, here, you helped me out with something else in the past. So, kind of like paying it for it. So pretty cool. Very nice Fist of Fate, by the way. Definitely by far my best item that I have. But you definitely want a Fist of Fate with as much lucky hit chance as you possibly can. Because again, the more victimized explosions you can proc in the internal cooldown, the bigger damage you're going to have overall. And unlike before, the unique affix actually matters because the victimized procs do get the damage of the unique affix. So makes your damage pretty wild, and that's very important, really unfortunate. I don't really like that part, but it is what it is. So you gotta take it, take what you can. Coming down to the pants, generally speaking, Dex max life armor. I actually want plus ranks to Heartseeker, but just didn't roll that way, and that's fine. I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. I just like my Heartseeker to hit just a little bit stronger if I possibly can. I'm liking the direct damage that it's dealing right now, but I can squeeze a little bit more out later. Then you're coming down here to Rakanos Wake. You can do this or Yins for a very easy way to cap your resistances. So if you notice, I try to really focus on trying to get my resistances capped here. You can just go with Beastfall Boost if you're still running with resource issues, which early game you're definitely probably going to be running with resource issues. So Beastfall Boost will solve all that with Heartseeker and the Shard of Varathiel. But if you can get innovation ranks and some other stats and things and a rune that helps you with your resource, then you can kind of skip that step and just go with Rakanos Way or Yen's Blessing and really get that resist all to help you get into Torment 3 really easily and also cap your resistances. So that's why this is there. I do need to backtrack though, because I didn't really talk about the aspects here. So on the chest, I actually took Concussive Strike, and on the pants, I took Frostbitten, so went utility on both here. If you notice, I do not have the Umbrous aspect, so you're probably wondering how in the world is he proccing Dark Shroud if he doesn't have Umbrous. Well, we use a rune for that now, so unlike before, where we had to rely on Umbrous, we can actually get a rune now, which is the Mott rune, which is gaining a shadow from the Rogue's Dark Shroud, reducing damage taken per shadow, so you can get it that way. And so I just use a procker in this case. Neo is really good for that because you're playing far back and you're getting a good offering for it. So this allows me to keep up Dark Shrouds without having to use an aspect for it, so we pick up more damage in that spot instead. So I guess I'll just talk about the other runes here. Sorry, I'm like all over the place with this, but I promise you, I got you covered. We got Pak Lum in terms of runes for the chest piece. As spin, you 5% of your maximum resource, which you spend quite a bit of resource with the Shard of Varathiel sword. So this is a really good rune to have. And this helps also restore resources with Lum, which as you see, restore 1 primary resource. So this helps you be able to keep up your resources without Beastfall Boots on Heartseeker. All right, so we're gonna go down to your weapon here. Standard stuff, Dex, Max Life, Vulnerable, and Heartseeker. Cast, get those basic stuff from any Heartseeker build in the past. If you notice, we're using a crossbow. I've always used a crossbow, but in this case scenario, you actually really want to use a crossbow because the vulnerable damage implicit is actually pretty high. And so the crossbow would just be better than using a bow. You can use a bow if you want, but you're missing out on 114% vulnerable damage, and that's quite a bit considering that a lot of our glyphs and damage in general has just been scaled back with the launch of the game, or basically the review of the game. So you do want the crossbow here, to be honest with you, and you'll be able to get enough attack speed to make it feel good. So no worries there. Now, unlike in the build that I have on max roll, if you notice, I have Moonrise here on the weapon. Why? Because I'm trying to get my Heartseeker to hit as hard as possible and do more direct damage, so my speed farming is quicker, and I'm not relying on 0.5 second ICD procs from Victimize. Victimize is almost kind of like a bonus for speed farming, so when it procs is good. If not, it doesn't matter, my Heartseeker's hitting strong enough and I don't care as much. So that's the reason why I'm going more direct damage here. You still get the attack speed, so you still would want it, but I put on a two-hander because I just really want that beefy damage from Heartseeker. Coming to the amulet, if you notice, I have nothing really good on the amulet at all except for dex percent. I have no passive, so it just is what it is. Poor man's amulet here. Vulnerable damage and innovation temper is what you want for here, but of course you just want your passives, right? You want Frigid Finesse, you want unstable elixirs. No, Frigid Finesse, Malice, Dex percent are the 3 things that you really want in amulet. So if you can get it, cool. It's gonna be a while, it's a journey, it happens, right? And if you notice, I have adaptability as the aspect of choice here, and adaptability also doesn't really do anything for Victimize, just like Moonrise itself. The damage doesn't really affect Victimize, but the multipliers are so large for Heartseeker that, again, you get that direct damage. It feels incredible having your direct damage actually feel like it's doing something. So for speed farming and most content in the game outside of pushing, I recommend doing these 2 aspects on these 2 slots and then kind of go from there. Then we have ring slots here. Dex attack speed, vulnerable, it's kind of what you want. And then vulnerable and innovation tempers. We take conceited. here because we have a barrier up all the time anyway, so we're going to get that that damage from the conceded aspect. And here we take, I have retribution here. I actually should have rapid, but my rapid value is so low that I just decided to just go with retribution. But typically you want rapid for the attack, the faster attack speed here. But just like the first ring, you want to do dex, well, attack speed and vulnerable, and also vulnerable and innervation tempers. For all your jury, you want skulls because you got your Rakonox weight with your resistance to all, so that's covered. So basically what needs to be covered is your armor, so skulls are really good for that, and you can cap in like T3 and even have a easier time getting into T4 as well without having to do too much to, you know, with your gear. Then we have the Shard of Varathio. This is also a very important weapon. Even though the basic skills unique affix doesn't do anything for victimize, it's still a massive multiplier for Heartseeker itself. And also the basic attack speed, it's almost like having an aspect anyways, it's just that good. So you still want to do the shard regardless, you know, with that. So definitely want to have this. And sword, just like the rings, we got or just like the first weapon, dex vulnerable. Here I took the chance to restore primary resource. When you have a pretty decent Fist of Fate, you proc this quite often, and it kind of really helps with that resource for Heartseeker in case you're not using the Beastfall boost. So I've chose to roll one roll on it. It's actually really good to have. But yeah, and past that point, you got vulnerable damage, and then Heartseeker projectiles cast twice, and cold clip aspect. The build does not really function well at all without cold clip, so it's probably the most important aspect to have on this slot. Coming to gems, you just want to go with dex, as you know, lowly dex gem up here as well. I haven't decided whether I'm going to do runes in the weapon and then 2 more dex gems here, or keep the sapphires. I haven't done really the math ever since they nerfed the gems going into the review beta and launch, so kind of playing around with that. But generally speaking, you want emeralds in the gear and you want sapphires in the weapons early. Now later on, beefing up and you're getting your no witness board later on, which I still don't have on this build, and I still don't have it because I'm only Paragon 169, so I'm missing an entire build and a glyph. You just want to just do sapphires, but later on you do want to try to get diamonds, so therefore you can get your ultimate damage and cap out your, or get close to capping out your no witness legendary node for massive damage to both your Heartseeker as well as your victimize. So and that is it for gearing. Now here's the version that I used in T4 earlier in the gameplay footage with the Mythic uniques now. So here I actually have the Tyrios Might, and I also have the Starless Skies. And the reality is that the Starless Skies is not really too much of an upgrade. It's actually more of a side grade. Here it just kind of allows you to be able to handle your resources quite a bit better, but it does makes it a little bit harder to cast your ultimate more often, just because of the fact that there's resource cost reduction there. So that's why I kind of call this more of a side grade. And if you notice, the Tyrios Might doesn't really add more damage. It just helps me be able to cap my resistances and therefore make capping armor also pretty easy to do in T4. So if you realize the difference between the Mythic version and the non-Mythic version, it's roughly about the similar damage from what I had. Now had I had a from a Perdition though, instead, now we're talking about a pretty significant boost to the overall damage of the build. But the reality is, when I, you know, with the Mythics versus without the Mythic, basically my damage is very similar. So I just kind of want to throw that in there because I don't know if anyone noticed, but in the gameplay footage in the T3 during the pits, my highest crit number was actually 815 million, and it actually was with the non-Mythic setup that I had. So just wanted to throw a little wrench in there just to let you know how strong this setup can really be, and that there's still more to go. As you see, I'm not fully masterworked anywhere at all. Also threw in Penitagrees, ignore that. I just didn't have a really good regular boot at all, period. So I just threw this in there just to, as a stopgap. But yeah, so all right, let's talk about mercenaries real quick. I'm still kind of back and forth between which mercenaries I really want to use. There are a couple of ones that have some really cool utility, so I'm kind of back and forth. In the guide, I have Subo, because he does give you like a mark that gives you in the same multiplicative lucky hit chance but it happens quite rare, and it doesn't like it's even rare on a single target, so it's really not up often at all, even if it is extremely good when it's up. So I've been playing around with a couple of different things. So I really like right here for the particular damage bonus here whenever he does his ground slam. I think it's actually quite nice. Also really nice to be able to help you cap your resistances too as well. So kind of really just a vanilla choice, I know, but it just works extremely well. I'm also thinking about playing around with Crater as a primary hire, because with the Crater he actually pull things in, and of course with Victimize, the more enemies that are being procced on, the more damage you're actually going to do. So with Density, Victimize scales extremely well, so having the pull is actually really quite nice. I'm not sure if it's better to forfeit the damage from by not having a pull. If you want to make him a reinforcement, you can just use that skill as the reinforcement skill for the pull. For now, I have Variana as my reinforcement, and the reason why is because, well, she has a knockdown shockwave. Actually, it really shouldn't be shockwave. I'm sorry. Let's go to Earthbreaker. Earthbreaker is actually better. So she casts her Earthbreaker on the ground, and it continuously knock things down. So anytime that Rain of Arrows might be on cooldown, then you have a backup knockdown from Earthbreaker. So she allows you to do that. It's kind of why I have it here. Again, I'm playing around with different combinations. There are some that might be more beneficial. It just kind of depends. But yeah, it's kind of all I got there for Mercenaries. So let's talk about Paragon briefly. And I kind of hate talking about Paragon in the videos just because, generally speaking, when I'm leveling, I'm just kind of putting things in places and just trying to get things maxed out or get maxed out in res and armor. So like the boards are not complete. As you notice, I don't even have a 5th board because I just don't have enough Paragon points yet. So this is going to look a little bit different than the planner and also the build online. Slightly different. Still same boards, still same glyphs, just which ones I attached first are different, and how I paid out of them are different. But anyhow, what's going to be standard and normal no matter what is you're going to have the candy glyph, the control glyph, exploit glyph. Exploit is very important because it's vulnerable. Fluidity glyph, as well as devious whenever I can actually get my no witness board there. Yeah, there's devious. So devious is going to go on my no witness board, which I don't have right now. So we have the starter board. We have Eldritch Bounty board. You want to pick up the Eldritch Bounty legendary node, of course. Then we have Exploit Weakness board. We pick up the Exploit Weakness legendary node. And we also have Cheap Shot. We pick up the Cheap Shot legendary node there. What's also important to note is that with the Exploit Weakness board, we do want to do either Fluidity or Devious here, because we do want to scale the magic nodes bonus and range. And on this board, it has vulnerable damage. So if you notice down here, I have, whoops, I actually should have taken that. Look at me missing some vulnerable damage there. All right, well, so if you notice, we're gonna pump our vulnerable damage up quite a bit by using either Devious or Fluidity in this particular slot. So very important that this is where it is in here. But for a clearer picture on Paragon, please make sure to check the planner below in the description or the Max Rule Guide itself. So before we go, I just thought it was important to showcase both T4 and T3 content with Mythic uniques and without Mythic uniques, so you kind of have an idea of how this build can scale given the fact that, with average gear and then also obviously with a little bit better gear. But if you notice in the video, I've had pretty mediocre gear all around, with the exception of a few pieces. So there's definitely room to grow and there's a lot of power missing. But for those who really enjoy Heartseeker, this is a video for you. I will be continuing to update as new findings happen. And as always, till next time.